Hello, seventh graders. Today we're going to talk about how cells work. Cells in action. Now, as you've learned so far, that there are different types of cells. You have plant cells, you have animal cells, and you even have cells that don't have a nucleus, prokaryotic cells, which are bacteria cells. Now, today we're going to be starting on slide number 18, and we're going to finish out these notes for you. So I'm going to go ahead and put my screen in presentation mode. And let's talk about the important jobs, how particles move, how cells make energy, and then cell division, how cells will divide. So let's talk about the important jobs. There are three important jobs in a cell. It wants to move particles in and out. It wants to make energy, and it wants to divide, cell division, so that the cell can reproduce to make more. Well, when particles need to move in or out, when you move small particles, sometimes it can happen very smoothly, called passive transport, and other times it has to have a little bit of energy, called active transport. Now, particles have to go in and out. So when particles are moving in and out of the cell, some of these particles are going to be like, it could be just oxygen, it could be carbon dioxide, it could be water, it could be salt. But then it also has to be able to move large particles. And those large particles, it has to use a couple other fancy words, endocytosis and exocytosis. Yes. So when we talk about passive transport, moving small stuff across the membrane, it simply is the movement across the cell membrane very smoothly, does not need energy at all. It goes from a high concentration to a low concentration. So you have a high concentration of these pieces here, triangles, spheres, and then it goes across the membrane, that's this part, and then it gives you into a low concentration. Examples of this are osmosis and diffusion, or facilitated diffusion, where it kind of gets a little bit of help, a little passageway, a little channel for it to go through, another channel for it to go through here. Now we talk about diffusion and osmosis. Diffusion and osmosis. You've all seen this happen at some point, or you've at least experienced it at some point, that when particles move from a region of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration, people will maybe spray something in the air. Maybe it's Febreze, maybe it's some cologne, and it's really concentrated in one area. And then it will work its way across the room, and then you can smell it. The concentration is going to be these purple dots. And then as those particles move across the room, it starts to diffuse throughout the room. That's diffusion. Osmosis is a case of movement of fluid, only fluid. That fluid most of the time is water. And it goes through a semi-permeable membrane, some sort of membrane here. Semi-permeable means it lets things pass by. So not like a Ziploc bag. That doesn't really let much go pass through, but I'm thinking more of some sort of like gauze or some sort of cloth that would let things pass through pretty easily. And it's going to go from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. And it wants to go from high to low so it's balanced. It wants to reach this word homeostasis. So I can't see the bottom of my screen very well, but it says osmosis is the diffusion of water. Osmosis is the diffusion of water. So now we talk about active transport, the movement opposite to normal diffusion. So we said diffusion wants to go from high concentration to low concentration, to reach that homeostasis balance. So there's an equal number of particles. And now we have to talk about, what if we don't want to go that way? We want to go the opposite. We want to go from an area of low concentration, and we want to shove more in there of high concentration. That takes energy, and that energy right here, required energy, has 3 letters: ATP. That's stands for adrenotriphosphate. You don't need to know that. You just need to know ATP. So when we move that big stuff, we talk about the endocytosis and exocytosis. Endocytosis is entering into a cell. 1, 2, 3. Particles are slowly crossing the membrane. They're being encapsulated here in this little bubble, and it went inside of the cell. Now, exocytosis, just like exiting the cell, is leaving the cell. I look at that same picture, and we notice 1, 2, and 3. It's trying to leave the cell. So producing energy in cells. Now, cells have to make energy. That's how your body moves. That's how your body does anything. That's how your body functions, is producing energy in your cells. So when we have to produce energy in our cells, we can now talk about cell respiration, fermentation, and photosynthesis. I just kind of clicked out of that because I had a tough time seeing the screen. Cell respiration, fermentation, and photosynthesis. So we're going to talk about each one of those 3. And our first one will be cell respiration. Now, this is how your body normally works. Your body normally works with using oxygen. Oxygen is an amazing substance. That oxygen molecule is trying to make your cells work super smooth with no pain. That's what it wants to run on. Now, you need to give it a little bit of sugar, a little bit of glucose. It doesn't actually have to be sugar. It could be the food you eat. There's always a little bit of sugar in those things, in the food you eat. And then the oxygen that you're breathing in. And that's this arrow is going to be like the equal sign in an equation. It makes, it turns into, it creates carbon dioxide, CO2, carbon dioxide, 2 oxygens, H2O, which is blue for water, and then energy. So we're taking in food and oxygen. We eat and we breathe. It makes for us carbon dioxide. That's what you're exhaling when you talk or you're breathing. And then water, H2O. So your body has to get rid of waste. Every time you talk, a little bit of water droplets come out. And then energy, which is that ATP. That's what your body needs. If you're running low on energy, you might need food. And then, of course, you need to always get oxygen. So the other one is going to be fermentation, the process of making energy without oxygen. Without oxygen. I just mentioned that your body needs oxygen. Now we're saying what happens when it makes it with that energy without oxygen. That's not good. It's far less efficient than regular cell respiration. It's typically seen in like bacteria, protists, and even some fungus. But it happens to us, especially if you've been running around for a while and you start to get like a cramp on your side, or your muscles start to cramp up. Your body is, those cells are running out of oxygen. It's slowing yourself down, taking some deep breaths. That's going to really help you clear out that cramp that you have because you're feeding that cell oxygen. And that gives you glucose plus energy, makes a type of ethanol. That's kind of giving you that feeling that everything really hurts. And then carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Our third thing of where energy in cells, it's a process of making food in a plant cell. So photosynthesis doesn't happen in you and me. Photosynthesis happens in plants. This happens in the chloroplasts. You drew those in our cell pictures earlier. It's a process of making food in a plant cell. Now, plants are great because they take in our waste product, which is carbon dioxide, absorbs water through their roots, catches sunlight with their leaves. Once they add those three things together, it gives us a glucose, which is a simple sugar, and it produces oxygen. So we use a lot of resources from photosynthesis and the plants around us. We eat fruits and vegetables. That's all comes out with the glucose. And then you have oxygen that's producing because we need that to breathe. So now we talk about cell division. Cell division. There's a couple of different ways that cells divide. And the first one we're going to talk about is how prokaryotic cells divide. Prokaryotic cells divide very simply. They reproduce by binary fission, and eukaryotic cells are going to reproduce by mitosis. Binary fission, which simply is one cell, starts to replicate itself or divide, and it turns magically into two cells. Okay, it's very simple. It makes a copy of itself. It's identical. Over here, it's a little more complicated. Over here in mitosis, you have these little things called chromosomes. They actually have to start to build a proper cell. It has a little more parts inside, so it has to take a little more time to do that. Binary fission is going to be a case that you have rapid reproduction of prokaryotic cells. There's a little video clip here, and then there's a little song that goes with it. Feel free to click on those and watch those when I'm done with this video, because you're going to have those in your notes for you. And it will show you how fast prokaryotic cells, bacteria cells, will divide. In a couple of hours, up to 24 hours, up to 48 hours, it will just keep going, and it will show you how fast really bacteria can spread. Now, how eukaryotic cells reproduce, that's the cells that are inside of us. So you have 6 steps of eukaryotic cell division: interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and then cytokinesis. I don't know if you can see that. Let me exit this for a second. And cytokinesis. So those are the 6 phases of mitosis. And you have underlined the first letter of each one of these phases, and that links to a nice mnemonic device called I picked my apples today cheerfully. Now, we happen to do this lesson around apple picking time, so it kind of links really well into maybe what you've done. If you click on this link right here, Cells Alive, Cells Alive is a really neat website that you can click on an animation that will cycle you through the different phases of mitosis. All right, I think that brought us down to slide 31, and we have finished these notes. All right, have a great day.